Like, what is your plan? Do you have a plan yet?
Well, I was just in the process of moving to Puerto Rico when this lockdown put everything on hold. But my plan is to keep, drawing comics and making podcasts and shooting videos. I just wanted to do it in a place with more people, a place with a bit more social dynamism, because I am not cut out for small town Vermont. It's not simpatico with my personality.
4 years was enough. No good
Yep.
yoga.
Yep. Well, I mean, I can still do yoga here, but
I can't do it by myself. I have to go to a studio. I'm so lazy that way. I need someone to tell me what to do.
Yeah, I agree. I will not sit down. I will not roll out the yoga mat and do a solid 90 minutes on my own.
Forget it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let me ask you this then, because I like to know the holes in my argument.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think I was either unreasonable or I went too far, or anything you think that I'm kind of wrong at? Because I'd love to know.
Combining some stuff that you said just now with some things that I heard in your vlog, sounds like you're holding on to some peak oil talking points that the last decade has just demonstrated never held any water.
Okay.
Most of the hydrocarbons in the ground are in shale seams. What we consider to be conventional oil, where just it's near the surface. It's a pool rather than, in the pores of rocks, and it's under such pressure that you can just pierce the ground and it comes up. That was the icing.
Yeah, I agree with this.
Yeah, that's not the bulk of the hydrocarbons available to us. And, the super majors, the big multinational oil companies, they don't do shale. They don't like it. It doesn't produce enough money for them. It's too technically complicated. There's too much variation from, even in one play, there's all kinds of different variations. You have to use this very sophisticated microseismic technology to find out exactly where to, drill that next well, or where to re-drill, at what depth to re-drill an existing well. They don't go in for it. So you've got this whole ecosystem of new fracking companies, some going for oil, some for gas, some doing both, but mostly not both. Mostly they're pretty specialized. And they have a dozen executives each, maybe 25 employees total, and they pop up out of nowhere. They operate until, something goes wrong. The company goes broke. They file for Chapter 11. And then the various people who are doing that go off and start different companies, and they get financed again. And, you can say that that's all chicanery, but as long as we run on oil, the advantages of having it here, getting it from home rather than having to have this military apparatus that allows us to lay claim to oil on the other side of the planet and to get in bed with evil fuckers like the Saudis, there's so much advantage to having this domestic source that who cares what chicanery we get up to? It's cheaper than a global military. It's basically it's a nationalized endeavor at this point, but we don't acknowledge that it's nationalized. We let various players, pop up and make a killing at it in a short period just to keep it going. But if you compare that to the price of a global, military police force, it's free. It's not going to collapse tomorrow. It's no more going to collapse tomorrow than it was going to collapse in 2007 when Jim Kunstler was making these exact same arguments, that the financing is irrational. It doesn't matter that the financing is not irrational. We need that oil for reasons other than just making money.
So I don't disagree with a single thing you said, right? At all. And in this new world, yeah, it might not matter how much it costs because we do just nationalize it and we use it for ourselves. I don't think anything you said there was unreasonable. And I think why couldn't that be a possibility? What I'm just saying is because the banks had such low interest rates since 0809, banks still had to make money, or they didn't have to they wanted to make money. The people wanted the bonuses. So what they did was they improperly priced the risk of these small ones. They kept on getting financed over and over and over again, just like you said. Well, that was because the banks, that was the only yield they could get. I mean, not the only one, but those were yields that were making the banks money. And these companies just kept on rolling over their debt, right? It was all, that's what I think Jim Kunstler's talking about, is it's all a financial three-card money thing. They just, because the interest rates were so low on the federal level, because the Federal Reserve didn't want anything to upset the apple cart, Banks had to go find yield. They improperly priced it with this shale, especially the small to medium sized guys, not the majors. But that made so much money for the banks that when that financing part, that's what I'm talking about, that financing part has to go away now for the banks as a money generator. And that alone, not having to do anything with the hydrocarbon, the oil in the ground.
If the banks aren't able to provide the capital necessary to continue the production, then the federal government might have to step up and do it in a more, honest and direct way. But
Yeah.
that is nowhere near the top of my list of concerns. Financing for hydrocarbon extraction, that's going to happen. That, worrying about that is like worrying about overpopulation on Mars. It's maybe someday in the distant future that's a problem, but there's much more acute things we have to deal with in the here and now.
Well, okay, so that is where I think it's just people's experiences and their education and what they know, right? You're probably right. I mean, what do I know, right? But my experiences is in finance world, right? My experience is going and understanding what happened, that why 0809 happened, and why the Federal Reserve did what they did. Okay, well, it was because of this idea of, the banking system is like the heart of an economy and cash is like the blood, and they want to keep this thing all going. And look, I'm not a Keynesian, and I'm not a, whoever the other guy, what was the other guy's name? Is Keynesian, or I don't know, the sound money Austrian
Sound
guy.
money astrologers.
Yeah, sound money
Keynesians are
Austrian.
typically contrasted with like Austrian economists.
What was that one guy? There was Heineck or something like that. It doesn't matter.
He's one.
So I'm not.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not saying I'm on one side of the fence or the other. What I'm saying is how our system runs on debt. That's why this small shale debt thing is so important, and it sends shockwaves through the system. So that's just my experience, and that's me reading the tea leaves saying that's a really interesting, complex, hard to understand problem that's going off right now. And yeah, man, unless you have a finance degree or you understand that world, it's like the overpopulation on Mars. And my understanding of it, I believe, is at a certain level why I think this is the important thing. And I can give examples of the bullwhip in the economy right now. Just the simple fact that that the Dow goes up 1,000, down 2,000, up 1,000. That's just that simple fact alone is that's all you need to know, that this thing is unwinding pretty violently. And if you know anything about the system, knowing that there's a violence in there, and knowing how options work and contracts, puts and margin calls and all these different terms, that's where finance is a huge problem. It's a huge, huge, huge problem. That's why the Federal Reserve said QE to whatever you need. And that's why the poor people are getting screwed. Like,
now, I hate to say this. I hate to bring this up.
Yeah.
But I'm totally partisan on the class level. I'm against the oligarchs. I'm for the working people. But when you give unlimited money to the ownership class, they don't go out and spend it on stuff.
No.
They try to lock it up and just keep it as, wealth. So they put it into the stock market. So when the stock market, they
one
put
of the
it in a lot of
things.
places, but they put it in the stock market, or if they own a company, a public company, they buy back their own stock, to increase the value of their stock, which increases their personal wealth. It's probably also going to increase the bonus they get. But they have all this money that they're not really spending on stuff. And if money is not circulating, then it's not functioning as the blood of the economy. And if it's not circulating, it's not playing that role, then you don't really get inflation. Like, people worry about hyperinflation. That, again, is one of these, overpopulation on Mars scenarios. I'm not worried about hyperinflation or even regular inflation. I think deflation is probably going to get us, because the money that gets given to the rich people just basically disappears. It goes away. They want it to grow, and so they move it around to different, growth areas. But those are all sort of distinct from the actual physical economy of stuff that we all depend on. And, hydrocarbons and fuel for machinery, that is real stuff. But when we're talking about 2008, we haven't mentioned mortgage-backed securities. That was a huge abstract, creation that dwarfed the real economy in terms of how much money was at play, how much counterparty risk was set up.
Leverage.
Right. All of our talk of, the 2008 financial chicanery and its relationship to hydrocarbon production, that is such a minuscule little sideshow in terms of that whole play. It was mostly just abstract bullshit that was falling apart. And if abstract bullshit falls apart, it's not a death blow. You just set up a different abstract bullshit system.
I hear you. And from how we got out of the last 10 years, I look at it as a gift. Like, they did paper over it. They figured out a way to paper over it. And smart people figured it out. And that's why I got out of it. That's why I kept all my precious metals, but there got to a point where I just looked at them and hated them. I was resentful for them. I'm a military guy, and I sold all my ARs. I'm like, I am out of this. I put all that stuff in storage, and I was like, I'm never doing it again. They're smarter than me. They figured it out. And I did not think the other eye of the storm was coming. Okay, but this is what propelled me to leave Fort Worth, and it wasn't the virus. So if this is true, if these photos are true and not doctored, NASA had these photos of all of China pollution from January 1 to January 20th or something like 19th. And then there was Chinese New Year, which is that week long or however many days, and then a month after. And it showed in 2019 how the pollution was before New Year, how it decreased during New Year, and then how it ramped back up, right? Well, if these photos are real, from 2020, same time period, there's no pollution. There's no pollution. I mean, the factories were already shut down. And now you're starting to hear that they started shutting this down in December. They already knew. They were already clamping down on it. So what I hear from that is the factories that refill not only all of America's stores, because pretty much pick the number percentages made in China, but all the world. Like, China was the manufacturing engine for the world. So we weren't the only ones who got conned into this. They've been down since, let's just say, Jan 1, and they haven't still come back up yet. Some of them have with masks and some other things, and they're still producing whatever, but a big percentage was down, and I don't think it's come back up. I don't trust the news that it is coming back up. Now, I could be wrong, and I'm more than willing to accept that. But from what I hear, what I think makes sense, I don't think they're back up. And I think that all countries have shut down their borders because they realize this. They're all hunkering down. Like, name the countries who've shut down their borders, that nothing's going in or out. Germany, Canada, France, Spain, Italy, Singapore, they've all shut down. Trade stopped. You can look at the ports, it's empty. Well, we're talking about abstract stuff with MBSs and all that. I'm talking about goods. I'm talking about real things. And you got to think about it too in a way where it's like, okay, in the let's say there's a plant here that has, it does beans, it cans beans, and we grow the beans here, and everything's here. All right. Do we get the cans from China? Well, probably, because we get raw materials from them. And if we don't get the cans, we get the raw materials from China. Because not only we did offshore our manufacturing and our jobs, but we also offshored our pollution. So none of that stuff's getting built here or mined here or anything. It's all over there. Okay, well, what about the machinery? What about a machine that washes the beans? There's going to be a circuit board that goes out, and they've got some repair guy that comes in, diagnoses it, and says, okay, let me call and order this part. And because we're just in time, that probably came from China, because that's where we get everything. Or enough where the probability of something failing keeps on going up and up. So my contention, and I could be wrong, someone could prove this, and then I'm going to have to rethink everything, is a lot of stuff in China is still shut down. So that means it's on month 3 or 4. How long does it take to get back up? Well, being in the corporate world, I mean, I don't know, manufacturing, I'm going to guess 3 or 4 months, maybe longer, because up and down that supply chain, you don't know what's going to open when, and you're going to be waiting. So now that's a disruption. So not only are there goods not going to be in Walmart, but there might not be repair parts. And the stuff that keeps the semis on the road, or the chemicals that keep all the water companies disinfecting our water, because probably all that stuff comes from China. I'd make a bet that it came from China. Everything does. And if they're not producing any stuff, maybe they're down 30%. Well, in that 30%, what do we have to have that we are not going to get? There's going to be one item. There's probably going to be a lot. And I'm just playing math. I don't have a social agenda here. I don't have a political philosophy. I don't have an economic theory. I just go, stuff's not coming.
You
I
know,
talked to
you're talking about beans, and here's the thing. You don't have to put beans in a can. You can ship beans in a bag, dry. They don't need to be refrigerated, and then people, instead of just opening the can and pouring them in the pot, you soak them overnight.
Hey, yep, we're going to have to get creative.
If we have to do that because of this, that will be a benefit.
I agree. I agree. But how many humans do you know that can change overnight like that? Or who have the forethought to go?
Though. I mean, yeah, people get into rigid patterns when they can afford to, but when you come to the point of, okay, you either have to do something different or you don't eat today, that's when people decide, you know what, I think I'm willing to do something that's outside of my comfort zone.
My mother started a sentence with, if people were smart, and I said, stop. You're right, but throw it off the table. I don't even hate humans. Like I heard you say, human beings suck or humans suck.
I don't believe that.
I don't either.
I made a video with that title, and so many people want that message that video has done very well. It was not my intention to feed that beast.
Yeah, me either. I am not talking down to anyone. I'm not. They did not become aware of what I think is important because of a ton of different reasons. They're not I'm not talking down to them. And hey, this was a line I told you in the email where, if this isn't the thing that brings emergence, then the system is the most resilient thing I've ever seen, and I will never believe that it can ever get destroyed. A comet can be coming down, and I will believe that we will make it through. Because I'm with you. If this thing works, if people do what they need to do and change, and it's all becomes a better thing, I'm in. Good for us.
Well, let me back off my position a little bit, if this is how it's coming across, because a extinction level event, dinosaur killing comet will kill our civilization too. We're not surviving that.
Right.
And,
you
talked about a magnetic pulse or an EMP. If that was, an attack from another country, it's got to be detonated at a high altitude, which means it has to come in on a missile. Not many countries that are willing to get into a war with the U.S. have access to that technology.
That was just my flavor of choice back in the day.
But a coronal mass ejection that hits the Earth head on, those things are directional. That's not an omnidirectional pulse that goes out from the sun. It is definitely directional. So most of them miss us. But one that hits us square is going to take down the electric grid on half the planet, and it will be down for years. It won't be the end of our species, but it very well could be the end of our civilization. It's just that these events, while utterly catastrophic, and they're absolutely guaranteed to happen eventually, the timescales on which you estimate these things are huge. So if you're deciding, what you're going to major in college, don't think about the coronal mass ejection or the extinction level impact. Those are not the problems of an individual human lifetime. If they happen when you're alive, well, that sucks. I mean, that sucks because you can't prepare for that. But,
so that's all I think just happened. That's all I think just happened.
What's that?
It was no one's that event you talk about was the corona, and it was the pin that popped this economy thing. Whatever this economy thing is, popped it. So it was no one's fault. It just happened while at this moment in time. So I
don't think it's the virus that's doing the damage, though. I think it's our maladaptive response to it and our lack of preparation, rational preparation, that's really causing the damage. But I think this virus it's got training wheels on it. This is what I've been saying.